McConnell. Mr. Leader, thanks for the time.
Glad to be with you, Bret.
You know, let me start on the president's trip overseas. In that piece by Jackie, he is heading there. He is not going to the DMZ, even as North Korea is saber-rattling about nuclear tests potentially or something else, missile tests. He's also not stopping in Taiwan. What do you make of that?
Well, I actually think the trip is well-timed because the single biggest thing we can do to push back against President Xi and other authoritarian regimes in the region is to beat the Russians in Ukraine. Both the Taiwanese and the Japanese Prime Minister and the Japanese Defense Minister have said the best protection for Taiwan is to beat the Russians in Ukraine. President Xi is watching how this unfolds. He's watched all the democratic world work together to help the Ukrainians beat the Russians. We're doing the right thing, and I think the president's visit to Asia is probably well-timed.
You know, you just returned from Kyiv, a meeting with President Zelensky in Ukraine. It came before the Senate passed the $40 billion aid package to Ukraine. Your reflections on that trip and the passage, even though delayed, of that money?
Well, the purpose of my trip, since it was an all-Republican group who went, was to reassure the Europeans, the Ukrainians, and others that we were completely together on this policy of helping the Ukrainians beat the Russians, and that we were going to send them a package that gives them the kind of military equipment they need to recapture their country. President Zelensky's definition of victory is to get the Russians out of Ukraine. One of the many things that's gone poorly for Putin is whatever Russian sympathizers there were in Ukraine are all gone. They've seen how the Russians behave. They've seen the atrocities. It's unified the Ukrainians. And President Zelensky's incredible leadership, you've heard he's been called Winston Churchill in a T-shirt, has not only inspired the Ukrainians, but all the rest of us as well, and led to the expansion of NATO. We went up to Copenhagen and Helsinki after we left Ukraine, and were there when they were debating their admission to NATO. The significance of that cannot be lost on anyone. Finland has an 830-mile border with Russia. Sweden has never been in a military alliance in 200 years. Putin changed public opinion in both Finland and Sweden. They're value added to NATO, which, as the president pointed out, is a defensive alliance.
Do you think we as a country are going to have to put more money into Ukraine, or do you think we're capping out now at $40 billion in addition to what we've already sent?
Well, we're not the only ones stepping up. The Poles, for example, are handling well over 1 million refugees. All the Eastern European countries are helping in all the ways that they can, many of them sending military equipment. This is a unified effort on behalf of the democratic world to stop this thug from success in Ukraine. Whether it will cost more or not remains to be seen, but I think the important thing to remember is what would have been the cost of not acting. It would have been way more than $40 billion.
Senator Schumer took to the floor to characterize some of the people pushing back on some of that spending and our priorities in this front. Here's Senator Schumer.
It appears more and more MAGA Republicans are on the same soft-on-Putin playbook that we saw used by former President Trump. The MAGA influence on the Republican Party is becoming all too large and all too dominant.
This is a theme now, the MAGA, the ultra MAGA, but in reality, to push back or have concerns about $40 billion, Josh Hawley, for example, Senator, tweeted out, spending $40 billion on Ukraine aid, more than 3 times what all Europe has spent combined, is not in America's interest. It neglects priorities at home, the border, allows Europe to freeload, shortchanges critical interests abroad, and comes with no meaningful oversight. Rand Paul suggested that the $40 billion should be a loan. There are concerns about it, but how Senator Schumer characterized it, how do you react to it?
Yeah, what Schumer said is political nonsense. My colleague, Senator Paul, has always been basically an isolationist. He's proud of it. and believes that's where America ought to be. That is a tiny percentage of the Senate Republican Conference. We only had 11 votes against the package. I predict we will have even fewer votes opposed to the admission of Finland and Sweden into NATO. There's always been a strand of isolationism in our party, but it's not anywhere near the dominant view which was expressed in the vote that we had today and will be expressed again when we vote on the admission of Finland and Sweden into NATO.
And you think you can get to 2/3 there for a Senate treaty?
Yes, it will take 2/3, and I think we'll get far over that.
Okay, a couple more things very quickly. The use of the Defense Production Act now by the Biden administration on the baby formula situation. There are some critics now saying, listen, this is too little too late. By the time everything gets put up, they may have the stock situation figured out. What's your take of that move and what the administration has done in this realm?
Almost total incompetence. They misjudged this from the beginning. It's not a matter of money. The FDA has a $6 billion budget. They could certainly take care of the so-called appropriation in the House that they just passed at $28 million. Bureaucratic incompetence. The administration was behind the curve. FDA needed to step up their game, and hopefully we'll solve this problem very quickly.
Last time we talked, early April,